So let's talk for a minute about the relationship assessment tool. This is the last page of the handouts of that section that's called relationship assessment. And it's very simple. Many of you have seen this already, maybe even all of you. 10 statements that allow a range of responses. So it's not only yes, no, but it's, I believe, strongly disagree to strongly agree. It measures how safe physically and emotionally a woman feels in her relationship. And you can sum this in order to come up with an understanding of the general risk. And the tool has been found to be statistically significant. It is evidence-based. And it's more comprehensive and sensitive compared with many of the other validated screening tools that we use. So it's a really powerful, simple tool. But because it's a piece of paper, it doesn't invite conversation. So the idea here is that this relationship assessment tool is still very important and necessary for your documentation, but the safety card allows you to have the kinds of follow-up conversations that will move things forward. The other thing to pay attention to about the tool, you describe it, you introduce it, and I'm just going to skip over this slide, and this is the one that matters. The thing to remember is that almost a quarter of adult Americans read at or below a 5th grade level. And so the tool is a relatively simple languaged tool, but it's not perfect in that way. It still requires some reading that many of your clients may not have access to. So you might want to review it verbally with the client. It's a little bit harder to do. People respond differently to surveys than they do to in-person questions, but it works in both directions, right? They don't always respond in the same way to written versus verbal. Please.
So how do you suggest doing this assessment tool with a family where dad, if he's the one that's physically abusing, how do you do this if he never leaves?
I recommend strongly against using it. Right. You document that you could not do it.
So,
and it's right there on the top.
I'll let
Patrick.
Patrick.
Benjamin's behind you. Patrick's in front of you.
There's only two. It's easy to get him confused.
I'm the bald one.
So I'll let Patrick talk about, why you wouldn't use it with the abuser there. But we always have the option for all of our screening tools if for some reason you can't complete it because either the parent refuses or is not appropriate. You just tell us that.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that's very important to make sure that you do that. And for the reasons we talked about earlier, if the partner is there, irrespective of whether the partner is abusive, the responses are going to be dramatically different. If the partner is abusive, you and the patient are at greater risk if you bring out the tool. So I strongly recommend that you not use the tool. Robin, did you want to say something? Or okay. So with that, I'm going to go to a video, and so Robin's going to come running up to the front of the room to set it up. And this is an example of using the relationship assessment tool and the safety card as a follow-up. And just to let you know, as she's starting it, it's intentionally not perfect. So you might not like some of the language. That's great. Let's talk about that when it's over.
She should be waking up any minute now. And she's good. Super cute, you'll see. And the boys at their new preschool program, so it's just the two of us.
I'm so excited to see her. So this is your new place, Amber. I really like it. It's kind of got that old school feel. How are you settling in?
It's mostly working out. My aunt has been well. As nice as she can be setting us up in the in-law here. I'm hoping when the dust settles, it will feel a little less stressful. It was really hard giving up the other place.
I know that was really hard for you.
Moving sucks the life out of you. I never want to unpack a box again.
I know. I moved last year, 3-floor walk-up. I may live there forever. Seriously, forever. So anyway, with all the move, your whole life changing, a new baby and some toddlers, how are you doing?
I guess mostly okay. Sometimes I can't believe I have one more, She's great, but it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. 3 is somehow a much bigger number than 2, especially when one of them is a baby.
I don't know what's wrong with me. Oh, God. What a loser. I'm fine, really. I just feel a little... Never mind. I'm okay. I'm fine, really.
Look, you just moved away from your neighborhood and your kids' preschool. You have a brand new baby, and you're living with your aunt that sometimes drives you crazy. It's fine not to be fine, and you are doing such a good job doing everything you're doing. I'm glad I brought this. It's a little housewarming gift for you and a little something for sweet baby girl Brittany.
Really? Thank you.
I remembered you said that you lost your keys in the craziness of last week, so keeple or just a cupel? It works either way.
Thank you.
So I wanted to share a couple of things today. We've started giving all of our clients this Healthy Moms, Happy Babies card. It's kind of like a magazine quiz.
Okay.
So it talks about healthy relationships, ones that aren't, and how your relationship can affect your parenting and your health. So it also describes a safety plan on there, you know, what to do if a partner was hurting you, has hotline numbers to call, all that kind of stuff. So it kind of serves 2 purposes. One is so that moms have the information for themselves in case they'd ever need it. The other is so that you have the information to pass on to help a friend or family member if you're worried about their relationship.
Thank you. This is good.
I really think it asks a lot of good questions. I like that it talks about good relationships and what folks really deserve. It also reviews what a lot of women deal with, being hurt or afraid of a partner.
I guess that happens a lot.
It does. And one of the things we know for kids is if something like that is happening to mom, it can really affect them. It can affect their health and development, how well they do in school, all that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So this tool here is just something to help get a sense of where things are in your relationship. It looks at your partner's actions and just gets a sense of where things are and how it's going with you too. It only takes a few minutes to fill out.
What do you do with the information?
Oh, we just keep it as part of our internal records so that we can keep track of how often we talk to moms about their relationships. You can see right here on the top of the form, it explains that we don't report any positive findings on this to anyone. The only thing we do have to report is known or suspected child abuse. But other than that, we don't share any information about your relationship to anyone outside of that issue.
Okay. Okay, Lana, so I finished.
Great. So, what did you think about these questions?
I guess I try not to think about it. I guess I didn't score very well, huh? I don't know what to say. He's hard. He can be very difficult. He can be so sweet, though. My boys are crazy about him.
Amber, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. When you love someone and have their babies, that might just be the definition of difficult.
Yeah, that about sums it up.
I can't ignore what I see here. You answered a lot of these questions, agree or strongly agree. You don't deserve to be treated that way or made to feel afraid by someone you love. I work with this amazing woman, Debbie. She runs part of the local program called Safe Haven. She really, really understands this stuff. If you wanted, I could call her and you could talk to her. She could help you to go over a plan to keep you safer, and go over this tool with you.
Look, Lana, I like you. I like you coming here. I look forward to it. But I don't need help with this. This is mine to deal with. Really, it'll be okay.
I'm not telling you to leave your relationship. Just maybe get some support. So we can stop talking about this for today. That card I gave you earlier, Healthy Moms, Happy Babies, with all the information, are you comfortable with me leaving that here, or would you like for me to take it away?
I guess I have to keep it, right? To help a friend.
Exactly. See you in a week? Sound good?
No. I'm glad you called. Everybody needs to debrief after something like this.
I know I'm not supposed to feel this way. I know. I totally know it. But sometimes I just want to take them all home in my pocket and just fix it.
Okay, so now I need to ask, do you want me to just let you vent? Or do you want me to tell you a story about one of my moms? Because I'm happy to let you bang the crap out of the table if that makes you feel better.
No. Go ahead. I think that would be good for me.
Okay. So the mom, Jessie, had 2 kids. And delicious, dimpled baby James, right? Jessie and James, ridiculously cute, right? Well, she was in the same boat. She tested high on the relationship assessment tool. Her life was super hard. Unemployed boyfriend. She lost her house when she had the last baby, the whole thing. And she didn't want help. And she wasn't ready to make a change. And about 4 or 5 years later, I saw her at Walgreens on Mercer. And she walked right up, this time holding big boy James's hand, and asked if she could talk to me. And she went up and said thank you. She got out and thought that I would want to know. And then she hugged me. And that is the story I hold on to. Because I didn't need to take her home and put her in my pocket. I needed to be patient and let her be where she needed to be at that time, not where I wanted her to be. And that is so hard.
Oh my gosh, I thought I didn't have any tears left. Wow. What a story. Thanks for telling me about her. It's funny how you measure success sometimes by the actions that happen in that hour or two. Did you make it to the appointment, get the new car seat, get that new WIC appointment? And not by the seeds you plant. Oh my God, I didn't even think of this till right now. Did I tell you? She did keep the card. And she said, just in case I need to help a friend.
Okay. One of the things I always love about showing these is the number of things that we heard already in this group that come out on the screen. So they're so clear that this room has a lot of wisdom, a lot of practical knowledge and ideas. And so this just really reinforces that for me. So what are a couple things you saw on this that you thought were really positive? We'll get to the challenges later in a moment. What things were really positive? What things did you like? What were kind of takeaways for you? Anybody? Please.
She spent a lot of time listening.
A lot of time listening.
To the mom.
Yep.
Even if there was some silence or some pauses.
Let the silence go, which as a facilitator, that's really hard, right? Yeah, thank you. What else? Anything else that you saw was really positive? Including in the second part? One of the things I always say is the fact that there is the second part, that there's debriefing, really valuable, really important. I love that they subtly modeled that, right?
Take care of ourselves.
Because we have to take care of ourselves, exactly. That clearly happens here, which I very much appreciate. Anything else? Okay, how about the negatives? I saw a lot of smiles that looked kind of uncomfortable. What troubled you, or what would you have changed about that intervention if you could? Really? I wouldn't leave on the negative. Say more.
It sounded like as soon as she was done with that, she left.
As soon as she was done asking the question, she was like, all right, you don't want to talk about it? Fine, I'll see ya. Okay. Fair enough, I hadn't picked up on that, but now that you say it, duh, right? Absolutely. What else? Anything? Oh, thanks.
Maybe a little boundary issue, giving a present.
About-
I'm not sure, but
Yeah, I mean, that's an
I don't know if
interesting
that was
question.
intended to be part of it or not, but it was kind of like, here's a present, and now we're going to talk about something really hard. Please talk with me about it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it potentially creates a sense of obligation that might be problematic. And I don't have a recommendation on that, but I think that's a really important point, is to be aware of the potential impact of giving a present. So thanks for that. Anything else? Oh, yes.
She just jumped right into making a referral without talking to her about what she wanted to do, or if she wanted to talk about it more, or what kind of referral she might want.
Yeah, it felt like she was driving the boat a little, or ship, or car, or whatever you want to call it, a little more than I might have preferred.
Also, kind of piggybacking on that, she could have looked at the tool and taken a few of the questions out and been like, well, I see you said strongly agree on this one. What does it look like?
Right.
And how do you feel when that's happening? So to get more of a picture and get the client thinking more about those
Yeah.
instances.
Yeah, she could have used the tool actually as a jumping off point for the conversations that were missing. So she missed a couple of real opportunities. Please.
When she said, I can't pretend to ignore this,
Thank you.
I
I can't ignore this.
Yeah, it sounds there's a bit of a power differential
Yeah.
that she sets up there.
And then she follows it up by saying, okay, we'll let this go for now. It's like, actually, you know what? You didn't get to choose either of those, right? And yet she did.
She kind of mentioned, maybe we can just call my friend right now, or we can call her and get in touch with her right now. And it's kind of like, some people need to ruminate on this.
Sure.
If you give them the number, a lot of people can do this on their own.
Right.
And it almost feels, I know that it's very supportive and great to have people to offer to help with things, but it's, give them the space and make them feel sometimes like they're not being handheld through stuff that they don't want to be
Sure.
handheld through.
And this is, I think that's a really important point, and it's a somewhat difficult one, because what we know is that people are about 8 times more likely to be on a call if you make it for them than if you give them the number. And it's interesting, in Bend, Oregon right now, they're actually starting a program with permission and with very careful safety considerations in place, but at the family planning clinics, reproductive health clinics, if someone screens positive for domestic violence, what they're doing is they're asking, would it be okay with you if someone from the shelter calls you later? Again, with a lot of considerations in place, but that's a way to try to increase the likelihood of outcome. I don't know how successful it's going to be, but it's an interesting test that's exactly connected to what you're saying. So it's an interesting balancing point there. Anything else? There's one that, oh, please. Giving Robin a lot of exercise today.
I don't know if I might just be reading too much into it, but the entire time it kind of looked like the home visitor was about to burst into tears.
Thank you.
And I just think it's super important to keep it focused on the client and to be able to control your emotions so that she doesn't start to be like, oh, I need to be careful about what I say because I'm hurting her. Like she looks upset,
Now I need to protect you, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. Sorry, not to use you in that. It's so true. And I want to piggyback on that, this thing about keeping the focus on the client, which I think is so important, with the exception of the place that she put the focus on the client when I wish she didn't, is the way that she talked about the relationship assessment tool. I can't ignore this. You answered this way, which is really problematic, as opposed to you're experiencing some really concerning things in your life, right? Actually, the problem isn't that she answered the questions, right? And which is really interesting because it also fed into the client's response when she handed back the survey. She said, I don't think I've scored very well on this, did I? And it was followed up with yeah, you gave the wrong answer. Like, wow, okay, the one time you really don't need to be focusing on the client is when she paid the most attention to what the client was doing. So there, again, this was intentional. I'll say again, this is a training tool. Futures Without Violence knows much of this stuff. So it was just a way to get this discussion going. Please.
Well, and I was thinking that attitude that she had was really patronizing. It was almost judgmental.
Yes.
And that, oh, you poor thing,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
Right, it went from empathy to pity, or at least it felt like it might have. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And with that, I have one more video that I want to show you, and then a little bit more to talk about. But as we said, we're getting to the end. But I want to ask this question: how can the safety card, as we've discussed, be used to make connections between depression, substance abuse, and DV? And I know someone raised this earlier, that depression, I believe it might have been you, Lexi, depression is one of the impacts of domestic violence. So how do you think the connections can be made using the safety card? Any thoughts on that? And if not, we'll just go right to the video. Please, in the back. Okay, so you can frame it as a way of coping, right? Do you use these behaviors as a way of coping, or are you finding yourself feeling hopeless? And again, as I said, this is what this next video will be about, so we can get into it in some detail. Yes?
My client, she brought it out on her own, because she said
Oh.
something about, he only does it when he drinks.
Oh, okay. Okay, great, yeah, so if she described it as an excusing component, as a way of excusing his behavior, he only does it when he drinks, you can turn that around and talk about how it might be impacted, that she might actually find herself starting to use substances as a way of coping. So thanks for that. I think I saw your hand, and then here.
On the kind of talk about coping strategies,
Mm-hmm.
and so one could ask more clarifying questions and really delve into the client's patterns.
Exactly. Okay, right. So it already raises coping strategies, hopefully more positive pro-social coping patterns, but it also gives you the opportunity to explore the more problematic ones. Thanks.
So this is somewhat disconnected from the safety part, but one thing we've been encouraged to ask is how are you doing emotionally when you first start
Absolutely.
talking?
Mm-hmm.
And so after you get these results, you could potentially tie that back in and say, you mentioned emotionally you weren't doing so well.
Sure.
Some of this kind of tie back to what you're experiencing here, and then try to take results there.
Okay. I'm not going to say anything else except for take a look at this video, because that's exactly what they talk about here. Thank you.
Marta, hi, good to see you.
Hi.
How are you doing?
The same.
The same? Okay, that's hard. Well, we'll get to that in a minute, but I have a gift for you and little Miguel. There you go. A gift.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He will like this, I think.
So, tell me how the breastfeeding is going.
I stopped breastfeeding since the last time I saw you.
Okay, no problem. It wasn't going well? The breastfeeding?
I fed Luis, but it just seemed like he was hungry all the time. So it just seemed better to stop. And then when I got pregnant with Carlos, so soon after, it was just too much because they were both so little. So the bottles just seem easier. With this one, I just don't have the energy.
It sounds like you might be feeling bad about not breastfeeding.
I just feel like I can't do anything right.
I'm so sorry. Have you been to the doctor? Or been able to tell him about how you've been feeling?
Not yet.
A lot of women don't make it to their appointments, especially with 3 small children. It could really feel like, too much. Marta, can I ask you, were you feeling sad like this when you had your other 2 babies?
Not this bad.
So how about you? How are you feeling? Are you getting enough to eat? Are you getting enough rest? These type of things are just as important as when you were pregnant. How are those things going?
Sleep, not so much. But I'm eating okay.
So I'm wondering, is there anything else in particular that's making you sad?
Just everything.
So when you were sad after the birth of the other 2 children, did you get any counseling or get on any medication for that?
No, I just talked to my home visitor.
I'm really glad that you're talking with me. And the next time I come, if it's okay with you, I'd like to bring my good friend and coworker, Maria, to sit and talk with you. She's really good with people going through postpartum depression and things like that. Is that okay?
Yes, but I'm not crazy. I'm just sad.
Marta, you're not crazy. You've got a lot that you're dealing with right now. You have the right to feel overwhelmed. You have 3 young children. You're just recovering from a pregnancy. It's a lot to deal with.
It is.
Marta, I do need to ask. Sometimes when mothers are sad and they don't get enough sleep, they have thoughts of you just wanting to go away. Thoughts of suicide. Have you had any of those thoughts?
No.
And sometimes when women are sad, they drink more alcohol or take drugs. Has this been an issue for you at all?
No, nothing like that.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. Has your husband been able to help you out with the kids at all?
Well, he plays with the kids, but he's just so tired when he gets home from work because he works so hard.
Do you have anyone that can help you, give you a break?
My neighbor. We take turns sometimes. She has my little boys at the park right now. She's good to talk about stuff, too.
Every mom needs support, and I'm so glad that you have a good friend.
Yes, she's a good friend to me.
So I want to talk to you about something a little different, about sex and birth control, because you didn't make it to your last doctor's visit. Have you been able to talk to your husband about birth control, or is this a conversation that you're putting off because the baby is so new?
We've already had sex.
And is that something you were ready for?
I'm his wife. I haven't really wanted to, but then I would feel like a bad wife.
Marta, do you feel like you can say no if you don't want to have sex?
You don't understand. I could, but then he would get mad. It's his right. It's complicated.
Marta, I do understand. I grew up in a very traditional family, so I understand complicated. So has he ever forced you or hurt you with sex, or hurt you in any other way?
I don't want to talk about this.
Okay, Marta, I understand. I just have a couple of more questions. Do you get to decide when you want to have more babies, or is that something that he decides?
It's really up to him. I used to sneak the pills because I didn't want him to get mad. I would hide them, but then I would forget to take them out of their hiding place, and I would miss the pills. That's how I got pregnant the last time.
Are you ready to get pregnant again?
No, no way.
So I work with some women at the family planning clinic that could help you find a birth control that you don't have to remember. Would you be interested?
He won't know.
You're right, Marta. He doesn't have to know. But I've worked with many moms, and I've heard this before, and it really makes me worried that you may be afraid of him. Even if this is your husband, you do not deserve to be forced to have sex, to live in fear, or to be hurt by him.
Yes, I am afraid sometimes.
Marta, thank you for sharing that with me. This is a card that I gave you a while back. It's got confidential hotline numbers on it. They could help you come up with a plan to be more safe. I called myself just to see what it was like, and the women on the other line were kind, and they're there to talk to you if you just need someone to listen. Would you like to call them, or have me call them for you, just to see if they can help?
Thank you so much. Maybe you can make the call.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm a home visitor. I have a client here with me. Her name is Marta. She's having problems with her husband. Okay. And your name is? Jackie. Okay, Jackie, hang on 1 second, okay? She sounds really nice.
Jackie? Yeah.
So interesting to see the difference in the tenor of the two rooms, right? Both times there's something particularly noisy happening there while these rather emotionally complicated videos were going on, right? So those wonderful things you get to pay attention to when you're facilitating. So what did you think? Different approach, right? I saw at least one person like this one much more than the other, right? Can you say why that was?
She gave her the option sorry. She gave her more of an option when she offered to call, and she
Okay.
made it a much more. I don't know. She didn't make her feel like that was the only choice.
Mhm.
You know.
Right.
I like
she
that.
said, you could call her later, or you could call her now, or I could call her for you, or you could think about it, right? Like there were 4 or 5 choices rather than call now or I'm out, right? Which is what we described the other one as being. Like, again, these were intentionally vague or intentionally complex in that way. Okay, thanks. And I saw you smiling, and yeah, much better. What else? What else do you note about this one? Please. Go for it. Go for it.
I kind of feel like there was an assumption made, or she made an assumption that, because I didn't get anywhere that the client didn't make it to her last doctor's appointment. Like that wasn't conveyed to me. It was
Right.
just that she hasn't been to the doctors yet.
Okay.
And for me, it felt like she was assuming because you have 3 kids, because your life is messed up, you didn't make it to the doctors.
Gotcha.
That's what I got from it.
Huh.
I don't know if anyone else got that, but for me, I felt like there was an assumption being made.
That's interesting. And if I assumed that we just didn't have all the information, but that's really interesting. There might have been an assumption behind it that I didn't pick up on. Thanks.
The home visitor mirrored and used the her client's language. So when Marta said it was complicated, she also said it was complicated, which helps to make an even playing field.
Yeah. It helps make it a more even playing field, reinforces to Marta that she's being heard. Yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm not reading off of a script, right? That there's an actual response to what you're saying. Thank you for that.
Sorry, I don't mean to
Please.
dominate. The thing that I didn't like was when she talked to her about postpartum depression, she gave zero segue into the fact that she may have it, but she's like, I
Right.
know somebody who deals with people who have
Who have it.
postpartum depression.
So she made the diagnosis
And she's
on the spot.
screening. She's not diagnosing.
Right.
And to also just sort of say you have it when the person might not even know it. I mean, honestly, some people don't know what depression is.
Right.
And
Yeah.
just to say that, that's a scary thing.
That's so interesting, because my read on that, I'm not a healthcare professional, my read on that was that she was trying to normalize it by giving it a name. No, you're not crazy. You have postpartum depression, right? Because Martha said, no, but I'm not crazy. Like, no, of course not. This is just what, but I totally hear what you're saying. It was a diagnosis which was problematic in a different way, so thanks for that. What else? Anybody else? Other thoughts? Please. Uh-huh.
And then she goes, okay, but I have a few more questions, or I have a few more things to talk about. It just felt a little disrespectful.
Right.
Even though they got to a good conclusion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a very challenging thing. How do you respond to a no? And I mean, my background is actually in sexual violence prevention. So like the word no has huge meaning for me, right? And at the same time, how do you figure out the conversation in a way, I mean, you don't want, if you can get the conversation to move forward by shifting it in some way, will that be okay with the client? So would it be okay if I asked you a few other questions might have been an approach? But right, what she said is, yeah, but my form's not done, which is a little problematic, or maybe a lot problematic. Thanks.
I think definitely a strength was that she normalized, like that it was a cultural experience that, you know, like that was in traditional families, that this is the way it is.
Right.
But then later on, like I think it was really powerful that she said no one deserves to be, you know, ... or whatever.
Right,
Like
right,
I think
right.
that's a good tool.
Right. And yeah, I like that she really, again, normalized the positive side of that. In an ideal world, what I wish she had said is everyone deserves to be safe and happy and healthy in their relationship, or everyone deserves to make decisions about their own body, or something like that. The more aspirational frame, despite that, I thought that was a really solid A-, right? Not quite what I would like, but I love that she kept that language. Other thoughts, comments, things that you would have changed? Did you feel like she did a good job of moving across issues of postpartum depression, alcohol abuse, alcohol and other substance abuse, and domestic violence and sexual assault? Did all of that flow pretty well? A little fast, but it was a video clip. Yeah, I think my imagination is that 10-minute clip, actually I think it was about 8.5 minutes, would probably be about a 20-minute or a 30-minute conversation, right? Okay. But did it feel forced, or did it feel like it flowed other than the, but you didn't answer all of my questions piece? Please.
Appropriate and maybe kind of helpful to the client situation, but then in this one she had a lot less pauses, and it was probably just kind of a different style. But I actually, seeing the second one, thought maybe it was even a little bit better for the client, because she, I think I would have felt like I didn't have to come up with something to say, or we weren't just sitting there awkward or in silence, or like she was waiting for a certain answer from me. So different than the first one, but I think that was really helpful now that I've seen both.
Interesting. Well, and I think maybe a piece of that is because Michelle was using such good reflective language and listening skills, it filled the pauses in a helpful and productive way. Whereas in the other one, where she wasn't showing the same kind of reflective listening capacity, the pauses were necessary for the client to find space to speak. Okay, yeah. So she was reflecting on what the client said, not just saying things to say it. And I'm repeating it so that the video camera picks it up. Very good. Okay. Final thoughts on the video. And this is just, as was pointed out, we do have one of the panels on the card is about coping strategies. Some of you had already picked that up and even commented on it, so thanks for that. Again, these cards seem to pick up a lot of things. They really did, I think, a very thorough job of developing effective tools. One piece I want to talk a little bit more about as we're heading towards the wrap-up, and this is trauma-informed mandated reporting. There will be circumstances where there's mandated reporting. It's the law. We're going to have to report at certain points. I'm actually in this job a mandated reporter for the first time in my life. And so this is news to me. I'm learning how this goes. It's a little bit uncomfortable. As a preventionist, I never had to do that before, so it's a little different. Trauma-informed mandated reporting, again, to the best of our ability, minimizes the impact of the fact that we're taking away someone's choices, right? Because that is ultimately what mandated reporting is. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but in a context of someone already having choices taken away, it can feel traumatizing. So to the extent that we can minimize that, we're going to be a lot more effective. And so acknowledging the patient's feelings about that, about the fact that we have to report, letting them know, I know this feels really hard, and the goal of this is to get you the support that you're going to need in order to move forward. Making sure they know what the whole process is going to look like so that it isn't mysterious. Remember in the first video, I'm forgetting her name, the patient was asking, what are you going to do with this information? Right? I'm putting this information out there. I want to know where it's going. So this is part of that, right? Figuring out how to inform the process. Help them understand what to expect, what role they're going to have in the process beyond this point and on down the line. This is what it looks like. Involving them in making the report. I need to make this phone call. If you want, I'll do it with you sitting here next to me. Right? If you want, you can even make the phone call with me, figuring out a way to do that using the speakerphone on your cell phone or something like that. Whatever you can do to make it more possible for them to be involved in some way, it's going to help the process. And of course, including their safety concerns in the report. Let the authorities know that they were concerned about what the repercussions would be of this mandated report. Excuse me. So the more that you can do that, the more likely that the mandated report will actually be productive and helpful as opposed to re-traumatizing for the survivor. Does that make sense? Any questions, thoughts, concerns about that? Please. Right.
They're going to come out to the house. So how do you even help your clients when it's like, I don't know what's going to happen?
Right. That's one of the real challenges is we don't actually necessarily know what the process is going to be. And quite frankly, neither do the people receiving the call. Right. And so that can be, I mean, you can acknowledge that. But my point is, to the extent that you can share the information you have, you're going to be more successful. And the other thing is that if you involve them in making the report, then they can hear that from the people who are receiving the report as well. The other component is you can say, if I learn anything more, which you're unlikely to, but if I learn anything more about what's happening with your case, I can inform you. Right? There's another way that you could, so I'll keep you in the loop as much as I'm in the loop, right? So those sorts of things could be part of it. Please.
Mm-hmm. So, in your experience, like, do you know if what kind of precautions they might take in terms of, like, if their abuser is, if doesn't have phone contact or just curious, like what that might look like.
I'm going to turn to other folks from MIECHV and see if you have commentary on that. I have one or two things to say, but I think you might have more. No. Okay, it looks like.
I'll support you and see what you say.
All right, I'm going to start vamping here again, right? I have little experience, I have to name that, in terms of mandated reporting, but with effective recipients of the reports, they'll make sure that this goes in the top of the record so that, for example, if a police officer comes out to investigate, it will be at the top of their form so that they will often not come in and say, well, we've got a domestic violence report here, but they'll say, there's been some concern expressed about something as vague as possible. And so they'll depersonalize it as much as possible, which in some cases de-escalates. not always, but so there are those sorts of things which can happen. Unfortunately, I have to put lots of qualifiers in there. Sometimes maybe it can if you have someone who's well-trained in trauma-informed services, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have it in the report, it's more likely to happen. If it's not in the report, it's not going to happen, right?
And
Robin,
I would, yeah, and then we have lots of expertise in the room, I'm sure, but I would just encourage people to know your local resources and having those relationships with your local resources around that, because it does vary a little bit, and there are often stories, and many of them are true stories where things don't go as they should. And there's also, we have to do what we can do, but having a relationship with your local entities helps to have the conversation. I don't know who had hand raised
in the far
first.
back.
Okay.
And we're going to take this comment and then one or two more quick things, and then we'll be finished.
I had a question kind of back to the relationship assessment tool that my group had come up with a few weeks ago. It says that we have to report if you are suicidal or your children are being harmed. Someone in that meeting brought up if it's in front of the, does harm mean if the child witnesses it, or does it mean if the child is hurt because they felt that that will make nobody answer these questions if it's just if they possibly saw it.
Right. Robin, I know you know this better than I do, but so if you want to take...
I'm going to make sure that expertise in the room, because I know many of you have been doing this for a long time. My answer has always been, in the state of Oregon, it's a felony to have a child witness domestic violence, and so that is a child abuse and neglect report. Anyone else want to make a comment about that? I know we have some seasoned experts.
And that, so it is reportable that a child has witnessed violence against an adult.
You don't,
yes.
Is it kind of, I was on the... Right.
That is reportable. It's considered child abuse.
We have to report it if we hear that the child saw, was there.
Right.
And one of the things I was going to say too is there are some of the organizations, around domestic violence and whatnot. For some of their funding, they are not reported mandated reporters.
That's right.
And so you kind of have to, if you're going to help them get to somewhere, you have to be, you really have to know whether you need to report or not, because they can't.
Right. Yes, that's very important. One of the other reasons that it's very useful to work with a domestic violence advocate is that most advocates in Oregon are not mandated reporters. And so they have a lot more flexibility in this regard. But you are a mandated reporter in this situation. So be aware of that. It's critically important that you follow the law in this regard.
And we have been following up with anytime we have a question about this, go to your supervisor or your clinical supervisor or your supervisor in your program for specific debriefing.
Thank you. Always a very important clarification. So I want to, we're coming to an end, as I said, want to wrap up just with this definition of success. Success is measured by our efforts to reduce isolation and improve options for safety. It's not about getting people to disclose. It's not about getting people to leave abusive relationships. It's about making sure that we're checking in with people, which normalizes healthy relationships, that they do not feel alone, and that we give them options. They get to choose what those options are. With that in mind, I mentioned earlier this where am I, the comfort meter. Where are you? Have you moved on that comfort meter? And this is a question just for you to, again, ask yourself. Hopefully you've moved on that comfort meter. You're feeling a little bit more comfortable having these conversations, thought a little bit more thoroughly about these topics, and I and lots of people from the Oregon Health Authority are here to talk this through with you further if you have any need for conversations. And finally, I promised to tell you, and this again is in your packets, this is the website where you can order these materials. It's simply futureswithoutviolence.org/health. Very good. They have tons of materials. This, with stuff on the back table, only scratches the surface. They do great work, lots of materials, and best of all, they're free.